This is an on-the-spot video. I have no script written for this. I'm just winging it. So if this video turns out to be 7 hours long, apologies in advance. But I did a video quite a while ago talking about all the max extensions that I see fit, and I want to talk about those. So, firstly, let's talk about lines that are for sure going to happen. So, firstly, the red line. Well, nothing new is going to... No extensions are going to be built. However, some new areas of track will be built at Gateway, including a new Gateway North station, and the red line will be brought to 10 additional stations on the west side, ending at the Fair Complex Hillsborough Airport Station. Now, I'm using PDX Bus app. If you're living in Washington County and take Trimet with any degree of regularity, get this app. I'm not sponsored by this or anything, but this has helped me for years. Very convenient. But anyway, so that's the Red Line project, extending it to 10 more stations, bringing it into Hillsborough instead of into Beaverton. It will still run through everything else, but we'll have blue and red line trains from the Fair Complex all the way to Gateway, so it'll give you extra options. So that'll be happening, that's for sure. A project that's been placed on hold is the Green Lines extension from PSU. Voters did not pass the bond measure in 2020 to extend the max out to Tualatin and Bridgeport Village. So, but that would include 10 extra or 10? I think it was 10 stations. Maybe it was 12 stations. I can't remember. But if you want, I'll put links to both of those. The Red Line project is called Better Red. Trimet.org/BetterRed, all one word. And the Green Line one was some other thing. Trimet.org/SW Corridor. It's called the Southwest Corridor Light Rail Project. If you'd like to search that up. Now I'm gonna. The rest of this stuff is my idea. My ideas only. None of this has any. Unless I say otherwise, none of these are actually being planned, studied, or anything like that. Firstly, is the blue line. So the blue line. People have talked about every once in a while extending the blue line off to Forest Grove, which could be done, but I really don't think it's necessary at this time. If you take the Line 57 bus, let me just get a map of Line 57 just to prove my point. If you take a Line 57 bus, it basically would serve the areas that are going to be served here. So the map, this here is the Hillsborough Central Transit Center, which the blue line serves. Right there's Hatfield Government Center. The 57 bus continues off to Forest Grove. So I would just take this bus. Forest Grove, once you get into Hillsborough, the ridership is fairly low. It's not like there's 80 people getting off the max and hopping onto a 57 bus. Even pre-COVID, it wasn't like that. So I don't really see the point as of now. If Forest Grove's population increases and goes to like 100,000 or something, then we'll talk about it. I'm sorry, I'm spitting everywhere. Okay, so, but those stations, I already did a list of all of those stations, of where I would place them. But again, I don't really think it's necessary. If they start talking about extending it out there, then I'll show you a map of where the stations would be and stuff like that. But for now, we'll just say, nah, we won't do that. On the eastern end of the blue line, it ending at Cleveland Avenue and Gresham is fine. The ridership, again, goes pretty low through the end portions through here. And by the time you leave Gresham Central or even Gresham City Hall, there's pretty much nobody left on the train. So, yeah, not really any need there either to extend it any further east. The blue line already takes an hour and 40 minutes one way, so it would be even longer of a trip. Now, the next thing is, let's talk about the Green Line. So the Green Line would come down through here, and it would hook up with the west, more or less. It wouldn't actually use the west tracks, but it would be next to them through the later portions. And yeah, it's pretty much that. It would end at Bridgeport Village. I think it's very important to, if you're going to end it at Bridgeport Village, to have it extendable. So have it so where the tracks are there and you can easily extend the line beyond there if you wanted to, say, go to Wilsonville or Woodburn or whatever and extend the line out to there. I think it would be a great idea to do that. Have the orange line extend off to Oregon City Transit Center. But even then, I still wouldn't recommend it. And the reason is because, have you ever been on the orange line? If you answered no to that question, you are among a lot of other people. A lot of people don't ride the orange line. It has very low ridership. It's almost scary low when you get through some of these areas. Sure, it's nice being able to serve OMSI, the South Waterfront, some of these other areas, connecting to streetcar easier than you could before. But when you get to this whole 17th and Rhine on, and especially to like Tacoma Johnson Creek on, it's a ghost town on that train in the middle of the day. So, yeah. Unfortunately, not really much of a point to extending it to Oregon City. It's the same issue with going from Hillsborough to Forest Grove. But if you did want to do that, I do have a list of stations of from Southeast Park Avenue on to Oregon City Transit Center, if you wanted to do that. Now, I also talked about in there, we're going to go back to the blue line here. Well, we're going to talk about basically 3 lines at once, the blue, yellow, and orange. I know those don't seem in any way connected as of now, blue, yellow, or orange, but trust me, it'll all make sense. I talked about in another Max Ideas video about bringing an underground Max line underneath Portland. This has been studied, but only very briefly. If you go on OregonMetro.gov, they did a study of it quite a while ago, and it was dependent on that 2020 funding thing to pass for it to continue to be planned. So right now that's been also paused. But it would bring the blue line underground. See, I think in that video I said, oh, just bring the blue and red lines underground and all that. I have a better idea. The blue line would go from Hillsborough to Goose Hollow without any issue. It'd be the same. But then after you leave Goose Hollow, let me actually get a map on here. I forgot this thing. You could do that. Once you get to the Goose Hollow station, which is up here, you will notice a nice grid. Whoa. It gradually reveals itself. Okay, serves Goose Hollow, and normally, if you can see this, the tracks take a sharp left curve here and go into downtown Portland. That's where it goes really slow. However, if instead you had the tracks take a right and go down here and go down whatever this street is, Columbia Street, you could have it gradually go down and go underground underneath Portland. This would be kind of a challenge going underneath the freeway. You'd probably have to have a pretty steep downward decline there, or downward grade, whatever I'm trying to say. And then it would take a left onto Broadway. Now, I have three stations that go underneath Broadway Street in Portland. Those are at Jefferson Street. Then a few blocks more, there'd be one at Pioneer Square where you could transfer to red line trains. Only blue line trains would use the tunnel, and red lines would continue doing what they normally do. And then green and yellow, or Transit Mall trains and buses will run on 5th and 6th Avenue. I'll explain the whole yellow and orange thing later. Okay, so there'd be a stop at Pioneer Square. And then a much longer distance, it would have to curve, I guess, underneath Broadway. And it would serve a stop at Union Station and Irving Street. Not at Hoyt Street like what the Max currently does. It would be at Irving, so you're much closer to the building. Then it would take a right, go underneath Union Station, and go straight across this way until you end up, actually up here, there would be a stop at the Rose Quarter Transit Center, underneath the Rose Quarter Transit Center, and then it would continue underneath Holiday Street, and there would be a stop at Lloyd Center and Holiday Park, or whatever you want to call it. And then it would emerge from the tunnel. There's a little bit of a hillside here. It's hard to tell, but these tracks are up quite a bit above that freight track. So it would come out over there above the freight track, and it would hook together with the main MAX tracks right around there at that 21st Avenue bridge over I-84. And then the rest of the blue line would be normal. And I say also what you should do is build all of those platforms to allow for 3-car, maybe even 4-car MAX vehicles just in case. And then you could work on figuring out a system to extend all the other platforms to 3-car or 4-car lengths long as well. And, you know, that way you could run those, because the blue line has the highest ridership by far out of any other line. And also, the MAX is the light rail system in the US with the 5th highest ridership. It might even be 4th highest. I'm going to have to check my facts on that. I'll put some text somewhere to say if the number's different, but yeah. So the blue line route would be from Hillsborough to Gresham via the downtown subway tunnel. The red line would go from the Fair Complex to the airport via the normal route on Yamhill, Morrison, and First Avenues. The green line would run from Clackamas Town Center to Bridgeport Village, somewhere over here, just like it does, just an extension there on 5th and 6th. Now, what about the yellow and orange? Remember how I've said before that it's really confusing because the yellow line is the orange line? They just switch colors depending on the stations? Okay, hear me out on this. This is going to sound confusing. The yellow line would run this... Okay. The yellow line would run not to the... Well, yes, it would. It would run to the Expo Center, and it would end at the Expo Center. Because people who have lived in Portland long enough are like, oh, you want to get to the Expo Center? Yeah, I think the yellow line will take you there. And yeah, it will, because it ends at the Expo Center. So the yellow line would run from the Expo Center and down through here and down through here on First Avenue and Yamhill Morrison, just like it used to from 2009 to 15, before this transit mall portion opened that it uses now. So it would more or less use the original route, except with one major difference. It would continue this way and serve Washington Park and Sunset Transit Center. In case you've never been to Sunset Transit Center in your life, I want to show you something fascinating about it. This is the station platform down here. See? Sunset Transit Center. Now, there are tunnels on both ends. The station's just kind of a cutaway thing. So there's a tunnel portal here, and there's a tunnel portal here. Okay, there's a tunnel portal, but the tunnel takes this 180-degree spin underneath the Sunset Highway and comes out somewhere over here. Oh, right there, pretty much. So that's strange. These yellow lines would not do that. They would build. You would build a new tunnel. Again, these are all my ideas. So I came up with some of this. I actually read on their Wikipedia page, oh, we're planning we want to build a MAX line on the Sunset Highway. You know, we want to have a line that goes down the Sunset Highway. This is that line. It would be the yellow line from the Expo Center through the old track alignment, so there would actually, and then it would go straight out. It would continue straight out through here, and this is the Sunset Highway. Let me take a step back. Blue lines would run from Hillsborough to Gresham via the tunnel. Red lines would just keep doing what they're doing, running from the Fair Complex station up to the airport using Yamhill and Morrison streets. The yellow line would also be using Yamhill and Morrison streets, so you would retain having two lines on Yamhill and Morrison and First Avenue, and you would gain a line underground that would be so much faster, and with the potential to carry 3-car or 4-car trains. If you had 4-car trains, you'd be doubling the capacity, which would be great for the MAX system having such high ridership. Also, I think it would be useful to increase frequency to, instead of every 15 minutes being the norm, have it every 10 minutes, and with the blue line, have it maybe every 8 minutes. Okay, the yellow line would continue straight through from the Sunset Transit Center and would continue straight down. Now you have two options from here. Number one, you could have it a long express where there's no stops along the Max Yellow Line except for two major destinations, and those destinations are at 185th Avenue, if I ever get there. And what's there at 185th Avenue? Well, that is this here, right? Yeah. This is the Tannisbourne Town Center. It's a major shopping center, and it comes down here too, and there's some stuff over here. Well, this is actually the streets of Tannisbourne. It's a different thing. But yeah, you could call it 185th Avenue and Tannisbourne. And then there would be one additional stop down here somewhere for the Hillsborough Stadium. There is no Trimet service to the Hillsborough Stadium. I don't even understand how that's possible. I graduated here, and you couldn't take transit here. Baseball games go on all the time here. Well, they used to before COVID. But there was no transit service there. It would be very useful to have. And if any of it were underground, you could keep portions of this underground. It doesn't really need it, but yeah, you could have it end here at the Hillsborough Stadium. You could even have it go further out and end at Glencoe Road or something if you wanted to. But for now, I think it would be great to have max service out to there. So that would mean that on this map, yellow lines would run down First Avenue, Yamhill and Morrison, all the way down to Sunset, and then they would just basically come up here and serve a stop on 185th, which is the same, that's the same 185th, and then over here for Hillsborough Stadium. So there you go. So then, wait a minute, that leaves the Orange Line. How's the Orange Line going to work? So that goes from Milwaukee to where? Vancouver. The Orange Line would have two branches. So you would have trains, some trains, or there might be another way to figure this out. But you'd have Orange Line trains that would run up through here, and they would still use the transit mall. So green and orange lines would use the transit mall, red and yellow lines would use Yamhill Morrison, and blue lines would be on their own underneath Portland. Okay? Orange lines come up here and cross the steel bridge. So now yellow and orange lines are running next to each other all the way up to the Expo Center. And orange lines continue into Vancouver, Washington. And the way they do that is through... there was a thing called the Columbia River Crossing a really long time ago. That was dropped. I don't think Vancouver really approved. I'm not really sure. But it would cross over into Vancouver. And then you have a few options. You could have a branched route where some Orange Line trains go down this way up to the Vancouver Amtrak station, wherever that is. I think it's right here. So you could have some Orange Line trains come down there to the Amtrak station in Vancouver, the Vancouver station, and some continuing north. Or you could have the yellow lines, instead of ending at Expo Center, you could have the yellow lines come up there to Vancouver Station and have the orange lines continue up this way to what I believe is the 99th Street Transit Center or something like that. There's a transit center off of I-5 somewhere. You could have a few stops. I haven't really looked. Okay, 78th Street, 83rd Street, 90th Street looks like this is a shopping area. And 99th Street. So I think there's a transit center over here somewhere that you could end at. I will look at a C-Tran map and see what are the best ways to connect, and then I will throw a station list up on the screen now of all of those stations that the Orange Line would serve into Washington. This is not for the Vancouver Amtrak extension. This is the extension up to 99th Street Transit Center or whatever other transit centers up here if there are more. I remember looking at a C-Tran map a while ago, and there were quite a few transit centers right off along I-5. A little Google search goes a long way. Here's the C-Tran full system map. Select to enlarge map. Ah, here we go. Okay. Oh god, what's happening? Why is this happening? Uh-oh. Okay. So it crosses into Washington here. Jansen Beach. There would probably be a stop there. So if we look... Why is this such a stupid map? Okay. It's a fine map, it just doesn't work very well. So you would come up I-5, wherever that is on here. And you see there's the 99th Street Transit Center. You definitely want to serve that. There was another transit center. No, I guess not. There's also a Fisher's Landing Transit Center or something like that. Okay, that's way over there. But yeah, let's see. You'd also probably want some sort of way to connect with the Vine. The Vine is Vancouver, Washington's BRT system. I think. I'm pretty sure it's a very... again, I may want to do more research on this, but it's some strange BRT system. So seriously, Vancouver, Washington figured out a BRT system before Portland did, and Portland has hundreds of thousands of people more than Vancouver. 99th Street Transit Center, you definitely want to serve that, and see we're right next to I-5, so if you had the tracks go up along I-5, it'd be nice and easy. And you could go one further and end it at the Salmon Creek Park and Ride. Okay, so if you were to go into Vancouver, you'd actually be going fairly far, because that's the Salmon Creek Park and Ride. There's Vancouver, and you see how far out I'm zoomed, so... yeah, definitely I would say play it safe with the 99th Street Transit Center. If you want to extend into the Salmon Creek Park and Ride, then do it. But yeah, quite a distance there. But yeah, so that's all dependent on if Vancouver actually accepts our vote. It seems like Vancouver has not been very accepting of certain things, which is very strange considering several C-Trans services come into downtown Portland. I don't see why we can't go into Washington as well. If C-Tran is willing to go into Portland and Portland was just fine with it, then we should be able to go into Vancouver and Vancouver should be fine with it. It's literally just going to be a couple of stops. It's not even any bus lines of ours. It's just the max, and it's only briefly. It's not like we're going all the way up into Tacoma or something. So that's how I see it. So now, let me do a long run through, or quick, let's make it quick. A quick run through of all the lines. Blue line would be Hillsborough Expression via the downtown south. Red line would be Fair Complex to Hillsborough Airport via the streets of Portland, via City Center, we call it. The yellow line would go Hillsborough Stadium to Expo Center or Vancouver Amtrak Station, via City Center. The green line would go from Clackamas Town Center to Bridgeport Village. Oh, yeah, there's an entire line I forgot. Don't you just hate it when you do that? And the orange line would go from Milwaukee to the 99th Street Transit to Vancouver. There's also a new line. You know how the red lines currently end at the pocket track in Beaverton Transit Center, which is that little center track? It's known as a pocket track. I've talked about track types in my Max 101 series before. But if you take a look here, whoa, it's hard to see, but that train, that's a red line train sitting there in the pocket track, and then there's a track over here and a track over there. Okay. Well, when they extend the Max Red Line off to Hillsborough, that's going to free up this track. This track is never going to be used anymore. However, I have a plan to change that. I'm calling it the Purple Line, the new line. It would start here at the Beaverton Transit Center, and it would go to Bridgeport Village. Well, wait a minute. I thought the green lines went to Bridgeport Village. Yeah, they do. The purple and green lines will both run to Bridgeport Village. What will happen is those trains will leave here, they will leave the Beaverton Transit Center, and you notice the tracks start to take this northward turn. We don't want that. What will happen instead is the tracks will take, I don't know how, you'd have to probably do something with that McBride place there. But the tracks would take a swing over here. They would take a swing. They would swing out over here and go on under this highway here, Highway 217. And you probably wouldn't need a ton of stations. Here's Highway 10, not sure what this is. I'll put a list of stations on here of what the Purple Line would do. So when I go to Washington Square Transit Center, which is right here, this is Washington Square Mall. The transit center is over here somewhere. Oh, it's right here. It might be underneath Washington Square. There is quite a bit of room, I think, underneath there because they were able to build... Washington Square is just a confusing mall, and the parking garages are weird. The Sears has a basement, but none of the other stores do. So there's obviously room under there, so you could probably build it underneath there. So I have it come in here. Afterwards, you would find a way somehow to have it hook up with the Max Green Line near where the Hall Boulevard station would be. What's this? Tiger Transit Center. Oh, that's the West Station there at Tiger Transit Center. Yeah, okay. And then the Hall Boulevard yard would be over here. So you would join up with the Max Green Line, probably by having the tracks run down Hall Boulevard, or again, possibly under Hall Boulevard, and having it join up there with the Green Line, and then so then the green and purple lines would run together to Bridgeport Village. That way, the purpose of this line is so that people on the west side can get to Bridgeport Village, which is on the west side, without even entering Portland. Whereas if you were to take the Green Line, the only way to get to Bridgeport Village would first be to go to downtown Portland, then take another train basically back to where you came from, just a little bit further south. So for me, it makes sense to have it so that if you're coming from this side, you can board Green Lines down there, or if you're coming from the Hillsborough side, you could take Purple Line trains down there. So again, very quickly, Blue Line, Hillsborough to Gresham via the new downtown tunnel. Red Line, Fair Complex to the airport, regular route. Yellow Line, Expo Center or Vancouver Amtrak to Hillsborough Stadium via downtown city center. Green Line, Bridgeport Village to Clackamas Town Center. Orange Line, Milwaukee or Oregon City if ridership picks up on the Orange Line, or if Oregon City becomes more populated. So Milwaukee or Oregon City to Vancouver, 99th Street Transit Center or Salmon Creek Park and Ride. Just Vancouver. And Purple Line, Beaverton Transit Center to Bridgeport Village. It would basically be like an upgrade to the west. It would be more frequent. Again, I think it's very important to have more max frequency, to increase it to every 10 minutes instead of 15 minutes. I was just in Seattle, like at the time of me recording this, I was in Seattle about a month and a half ago, and the Link light rail there runs every 10 minutes, and during the rush hour it goes down to every 8 minutes. We have a billion max lines, and ours are on 15-minute frequency per line. So if you're in this area, you're in luck because there are 3 lines here, so they're about 5 minutes apart. So I think it's important to shrink that down even more. I say all max lines should run with 10 to 12-minute frequency, and the blue line should run 8 to 10-minute frequency. And in the peak rush hour, even down to maybe every 5 minutes. So that's where I see the max going. If I were hired on at Trimet to plan the future of the max, that's how I would do it. Now, is my way of thinking like everyone else's way of thinking? Absolutely not. If you thought of a better way, if you thought of more lines, additional lines, people have talked about Powell Boulevard getting its own line. Well, I'll talk about why that might not be a great idea here in a separate video where I talk about something I've never talked about before, and that is well, you saw it there for a second, the streetcar. I've never talked about the streetcar because this is not called Portland Streetcar 101. However, I'm going to make an exception because I see a very bright future for Portland Streetcar, and I see a happy medium for streetcars. I will explain that later when you see that video. But for now, this went on. This probably ended up being multiple videos. Sorry about that. Or it's just one really super long video that I'm just making even worse. Goodbye.